guys, it's Jason. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got the Beta FPV Meteor 75 Pro on the bench. The 75 Pro is the update to Beta FPV's Meteor 75. This version has huge 45mm props, but it still has a 1S power system. And what that means is it's super easy to fly and control indoors, but it can also fly outdoors in smaller outdoor spaces. That makes it a great choice for anyone who's just getting into FPV or anyone who just needs a new tiny whoop that can do it all. The Meteor 75 Pro is basically a Meteor 75, but bigger and more powerful in every way. Here's a quick size comparison between the Meteor 75 Pro and the Nanohawk from Emax. These are both 1S quads. Just look at the size difference. It's absolutely huge. Now, even though it's called the 75 Pro, it's not 75mm motor post to motor post. I just measured this and it comes in at about 81mm. So this is really the Meteor 80 or something like that. But the Pro in the 75 Pro refers to the upgrades. The frame is larger, the props are larger, the battery's larger, and it flies longer. Here's what you get in the box with your Meteor 75 Pro. A bag with some props, screwdriver, some screws, a 550 milliamp LiPo battery with a Beta FPV BT 2.0 connector. Looks like there's another one on the drone. You get two in total. Another bag with some parts. It looks like a battery connector and some pieces for the canopy. A USB-C cable for that battery charger, a Beta FPV card with a QR code sending you to their knowledge base. Last but not least, the drone itself with another 1S 550 milliamp battery already installed. I have to say I am loving that color scheme. It's the typical Beta FPV blue and white, but in this case it looks very, very nice. I really like it. The Meteor 75 Pro comes in both analog and digital versions with Walksnail or HD0 digital systems. You can get it with ELRS, FrSky, or Crossfire receivers. The FrSky and ELRS receivers are built right into the all-in-one flight controller board, but the Crossfire is an external receiver with an external antenna. I have the analog version with the built-in ELRS receiver, which I think is going to be the most practical option for most people because the ELRS receiver will give you all the range you will ever need with this quad, and the analog VTX is perfectly fine for a tiny whoop. Of course, a digital VTX would be nice, but that will more than double the cost. This entire drone is about the cost of just the digital VTX system. So for a tiny whoop and the type of flying that I like to do with tiny whoops, this is an affordable option. And of course, it's a great option for people just getting started in FPV. Another very cool feature about the ELRS version of this quad is that the integrated receiver is serial based, not SPI based. Now, in the past with integrated receivers, we had to reflash all the Betaflight software just to update the ELRS receiver. With this board, you can just update the ELRS receiver over Wi-Fi like you normally would as if it were an external receiver, and that's a huge plus. If you are interested in one of the digital versions, keep in mind the quad is basically the same, except of course the camera, the VTX, the antenna, and therefore the weight will be a little bit more with the digital version and the color scheme. It's cool to have Crossfire as an option if you're after the ultimate tiny whoop, especially for one of the digital versions where the extra range you're going to get out of that digital system might justify the extra cost and weight of installing an external Crossfire receiver on there. I actually have a Crossfire receiver installed on this 65mm tiny whoop, but to be honest, it's complete overkill. You're never going to get that much range out of that VTX anyway, so having a long range receiver is a little bit silly, but then again, this tiny whoop came out before ELRS was really a thing. Now that we have the option of ELRS, I don't think Crossfire on a tiny whoop really makes all that much sense, but hey, if you have Crossfire, you want to fly Crossfire on a tiny whoop, more power to you. I do run Crossfire on all of my larger quads when I really want the extra confidence and the extra range, and I'm using this external ELRS module from Beta FPV. It works great. It's power switchable from 100, 250 to 500 milliwatts, which is a ton of range for ELRS with just the push of this button right here, and it's something like 40 bucks on Amazon, so it's very affordable. The coolest thing about this quad, and the real selling point for me, specifically the analog version, is how lightweight it is. It comes in at 31.1 grams on my scale, and that's incredibly lightweight if you consider that it's spinning 45 millimeter props, so the thrust to weight ratio is insanely high, which means it's going to fly super well. And it also means it's going to be more survivable in crashes. The camera is Beta FPV's CO3, which is a 1200 TVL camera with a 2.1 millimeter lens and a 160-degree field of view. Now, analog cameras have really come a long way over the years, and this one looks great, especially considering it only weighs 1.5 grams. The canopy and the frame both seem super strong, and they will definitely survive some crashes. The design of the canopy holds the camera at a set angle of either 20 or 30 degrees. That means that changing your camera angle requires disassembling the canopy and using a different insert. But on the plus side, that camera angle won't change when you crash like it will with other Tiny Whoops. The camera angle that it ships with is just fine for my flying style. I mostly fly indoors, and I haven't had any need to change it. The motors are Beta FPV's 1102 22,000 kV, and they use plugs to plug right into the flight controller. What that means is that if you burn out a motor, swapping it out will be real easy. No soldering is required. The props are 45 millimeters and have 3 blades. To put in perspective how huge those are for a 1S quad, just look at the props on this Emax Nanohawk. The difference is huge considering they're both using 1S batteries. Those huge 45 millimeter props is really the biggest selling feature of this drone, because the larger props are going to give you more thrust when you need it, while at the same time making it easier to control the drone at low speeds and giving you longer flight times, which is why I think this is a great drone for beginners or anyone who's looking for a versatile Tiny Whoop that can be flown both indoors and outdoors. It has a 350 milliwatt VTX, which should be more than enough for flying indoors or smaller outdoor spaces. To put that into perspective, my 65 millimeter Tiny Whoops both have 25 milliwatt VTXs. So a 350 milliwatt VTX is going to give us some pretty nice range for a Tiny Whoop. You get 2 1S 550 Beta FPV LiPo batteries and a cool little battery charger. This charger is actually pretty useful. It will charge 2 batteries at the same time, and one of these, where it says test, will test your battery voltage, which is super useful for 1S batteries because you can never remember if you charge them up or not. And of course, it's USB-C. These chargers have come a long way from these little USB things we used to get with Tiny Whoops. Keep in mind though that this battery charger will charge you 1S batteries up to 4.3 volts, not 4.2 volts. So when we're talking about flight times and performance, Beta FPV is assuming that you're overcharging your batteries to 4.3 volts. Naturally, everything in this kit comes with Beta FPV's BT 2.0 connectors. Now, the thing about these connectors is, on one hand, these are the best 1S connectors on the market, arguably. They use miniature banana plugs instead of pins like the PH2 connectors, and so they transfer the amps from your battery to your ESC more efficiently, which means longer, more efficient flights. The problem that I have with these connectors is that both of my other 65 millimeter Tiny Whoops, they use GNB 27 connectors. I have a pile of old 1S batteries with PH2 connectors. I already had these Race Day Quad 525 milliamp batteries, which happened to fit the battery tray perfectly, and so I wanted to use them because I'd rather have 6 batteries than just the 2 that come with the quad. But I did have to switch the connectors from PH2 over to the BT 2.0 connectors. I picked up a pack of connectors on Amazon. They're real inexpensive, and I went ahead and soldered on these new connectors, and they're working great. Now that I've done that, I'm really happy with them. But I will mention that those connectors are tiny. You might want to just pick up a pack of extra batteries. Beta FPV has them, and they're also available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. Beta FPV claims 6.5 minutes with these 550 milliamp batteries. I'm not seeing quite that much flight time, but then again, I also don't fly my batteries down to the point where the drone will be forced to land. I much prefer to land a little bit sooner and take care of my batteries a little bit more, get a few more cycles out of them before I need to replace them. I'm seeing closer to 5 minutes of flight time indoors and a little less than that when I fly outdoors because I'm a little heavier on the throttle. I am loving the 45 millimeter props on the 1S power system because it means I can fly it indoors and I can take it outdoors and fly it around the park with my kids, and it's just a ton of fun. It's probably the most versatile tiny whoop that I've ever seen. I really appreciate that Beta FPV has tuned this quad properly, and so when you open up the box, you just bind it to your radio and you're off to fly. You don't really need to do much as far as setup goes. I also really like the analog ELRS version specifically because it's lighter weight than the digital version and it's extremely cost effective, which makes it great for beginners, or if you just want another tiny whoop in your fleet and you want something that can do it all, this is a great option. All right, you guys, it wouldn't be a fair review if I didn't point out any disadvantages or flaws that I found in this drone. And I can really only think of two things. First of all, the design of the canopy means it's difficult to change the camera angle. That means if you want to fly indoors a little bit slower with less camera angle and then go out to the park and fly outdoors faster with more camera angle, it's a little bit inconvenient to have to remove the canopy in order to change the camera angle. But the flip side of that is your camera angle isn't going to get changed inadvertently when you crash like it does on other tiny whoops. The other disadvantage that I can think of is just that it's not digital. But like I mentioned, the fact that it's analog makes it lighter weight, cheaper, and a little bit more beginner friendly because that entry-level price point is a little bit more comfortable for some people. All right, you guys, let me know what you think of a 1S tiny whoop with 45 millimeter props. Is this a home run or a swing and a miss for Beta FPV? Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.